it's a great solution, but if they're not aware of the problem, then it's hard for you to say that you're the solution to the problem they weren't aware of.
Yeah.
There's a tipping point where they suddenly become aware, and that's when they're really good to talk.
The following is a conversation with Craig Savage, data scientist turned tech entrepreneur. He is on his biggest challenge yet as the CEO and founder at Fero Payment Science. He was head of data science payments at MasterCard and worked at organizations like HSBC and NatWest in the past. Fero focuses on building product designed to improve checkout conversion by tailoring payment methods to each individual shopper. They want their customers to forget about card abandonment and checkout every time. Hi, Craig. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. It is great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome. So, yeah, we spoke earlier. One thing that came out of the conversation that was intriguing is your journey. So, you have a non tech background, and from there, becoming a head of data science at MasterCard must be a journey.
Yeah, there's a lot of steps. Yeah, I left school when I was 16 and started to work. And then I always had an aptitude for maths. That was obviously, I wouldn't have got to the end up position if I didn't. Obviously, I like the logic, the routines, how you could pick things apart. I trained actually, so I came out of school, started working. I then did some credit control sort of jobs, and I thought I wanted to be an accountant, and I started to train to be an accountant, but I found it a bit boring. I struggled with it a little bit, and I thought, I saw a future life. I thought, I'm not sure I want this forever. So in my
So, you like
mid-20s,
numbers but not accounts.
yeah,
That
100%,
kind of
yeah,
numbers.
that was just a little bit. I couldn't quite tie it to a real business problem. I just felt I was just moving things around for the process. But HSBC were recruiting recent and local, so I went to them and they went through some aptitude testing and they put me into a reconciliations department. And in there, they had VBA behind some sheets. Don't forget, this was early 2000, building out VBA and then moving into SQL and then just working my way through the rungs of HSBC and different analytics departments until got to Barclays. Then I started jumping around the banks doing different things and then learned Python. And Python's great, right? From an open source perspective, it's really easy to learn. Yeah, and then off I went. That's how I built that skill set up. Lots and lots of little steps along the way. But ultimately, every single step I had to figure out and learn myself. Google, understand how it worked, do some kind of online courses, in-person courses.
A lot of Stack Overflow.
There was a lot. Yeah, I'm a bit jealous now that people have ChatGPT and they can use that for coding, because that would have been really helpful. Because I always felt you had to take 10 different lots of Stack Overflow and mash them all together like Frankenstein's monster to get something to actually work. But a lot of time on Stack Overflow. More taking than contributing.
Although I think sifting through documentation quickly is definitely a skill that requires practice. So yeah, ChatGPT is great for people today, but I'm sure over the years, sifting through documentation is a skill that now you probably enjoy, or at least will add tremendous value.
I always think of it like if someone has the ability to be able to look at a problem, work out what they need to learn, and then go and source that themselves and find out an answer, I can really rate that skill, really value that skill, because there's always going to be new languages, new problems. You might have someone that comes out of university and they've been taught X programming language, but 4 years' time, that's likely to be dropped and there'll be a new one that we're learning. If they don't have that skill set in them to be able to find it themselves, they'll struggle.
Yeah.
I do see a lot of time in this industry that we have people who are very technically gifted, and then we promote them up to be managers and they end up being in positions perhaps they shouldn't be. Things. So yeah, I guess a variety. I honestly still don't know whether I'm a good manager or not. I still question things. There's certain things that I like to think of. There's something I read where it was try and imagine that people are working for free and treat them like that they've donated their time for that day. I like that. So I always try and think about that. I'm quite empathetic. So I have a lot of one-to-ones and try and really listen to them. So it helps.
Oh, that's
Time will
so
tell
interesting way
whether
to
I'm a
look
good
at it.
leader or not. We'll
Nice.
see. The good thing is that a lot of people I've worked with have joined me in this new startup. So that should hopefully speak volumes. I'll take stuff from that. I'm sure there's still some former team members that maybe don't feel the same way. But
yeah, if you can bring talent across projects or companies rather, yeah, that speaks a lot. That speaks a lot.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Looking at the data point, I'll take that as a win.
Yeah. We were talking about understanding of the business and how it helped you to grow into the leadership role. So you are both a CTO and a CEO in your current role?
Yeah, it's look, I'm also a CFO and a CMO, and there's lots of different hats I wear. I'm quite fortunate. I've got a very good engineering team. I
Hmm.
also have a good head of data science as well, and also have a CPO as well that's really strong. So we work very collectively at times, but I think you need to know the vision, the strategy, where you're going as a company, because you make so many kind of innocuous decisions at this point, building up different tech stacks or building different layers of the product that you can be stuck with for years and years to come. That's going to be really hard to pull out. So if you don't have that eyes on the long-term vision, you'll make decisions that you're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, why did we build it this way? How do we change it? We're going to have to rip it all out and start again because you just weren't thinking long-term. Now, you don't want to be putting engineers on sales calls, or maybe not all of them. You've got to find that right line, but yeah, definitely everyone should be involved, yeah, and want to be as well. Startup is you just can't stay in your own little pot, in your own little lane, and just not pay any attention. That's not the way it works. Your family in each other's business and contributing and helping as a collective.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm certainly going to get involved in everyone else's. So yeah,
Yeah, as a founder, you have no choice, right? You have to go so wide. At times, from the outside, it looks the whole startup journey for people who are starting out or raising money and eventually getting some traction. It looks all appealing, but this
mm.
side of going wide takes a toll on you.
Yeah, because it's all consuming. It's a lot of spinning plates. You have to be constantly thinking about whether. So I've got a conference coming up, so doing a lot of effort and work on that now. And I have a sales call. Then obviously we're having this call now, and then I have a product call, data science team call. I've got some investor calls this afternoon that's going on. There's a lot of things you have to be thinking about. Yeah, it does take its toll because if you have all this all in your mind, all these different things, it doesn't leave a lot of room for other things. So I can be talking to my wife and she'll be talking to me about a holiday or I don't know, restaurant bookings that's coming up, and I'm half listening and she catches me out a lot.
What's happening
Yeah.
at
I'm
Fero?
busy thinking about that. Yeah, 100%, 100%. Which isn't great because when you're running a startup, working a startup, it's very all consuming and you do tend to take from those close to you. You don't give as much. You take a lot from that bank that you built up, whereas you don't tend to give as much because your time is consuming. You're on less money. There's lots more constraints. There's more pressure.
Yeah.
You've got to keep an eye on that.
And so, how do you what's the damage? How are things at your end personal?
I think last year, the first year was, I think I allowed it to really become, I stopped spending a lot of time with certain friends that weren't in the startup community
Hmm.
because I didn't really want to talk about football or sport or things. All I wanted to do was talk about startup life. And that's the people I hung out with. This year, I am being a bit more like recognizing it's okay to have a little bit of time here and there. So I will work at weekends, but then I'll also take time off during the week, take a couple of hours here or go pick up my daughter early from nursery and spend time with her and not feel guilty about it because I know I've put that time in elsewhere. So there's no way you can stop. It's not a 5 day a week sort of job. There's no way
Yeah.
you can stop that because it's always going to be so fresh in mind. But you can just accept that and make it a little bit more hybrid.
Yeah, I guess if you can't switch off completely, at least use the flexibility that you get from being a founder. Right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, 100%, 100%. So yeah, if I do want to take a 2 hour lunch, there's not many people that can say no to me.
so, yeah.
It's just myself that's going to give myself a hard time. So
Yeah. So let's take a step back a little bit and maybe zoom in on Fero. And Fero, and what do you guys do?
yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, so I spent my life working in big banks, and that was fun. But I really wanted to have an impact, so I joined a small scale-up, a company called Akata. They were opening up an Amsterdam office. They were based out of Seattle, so it's like a scale-up. But I felt startup because I was employee number one. They sent 2 people over, and we built a team out. So we had this just little nest of ourselves with the bigger support of the big org, and that became part of MasterCard. It got acquired by MasterCard, which was great. Stayed there another couple of years, but then found myself back at a big org and I wanted to be a founder, like really at the early stage. And so I left and I signed up for the founder residency program. And yeah, I already had an idea. They wanted you to come with an idea, and I had an idea, which is around about improving the customer experience of checkout and payments, specifically around 3DS. So that authentication step we have to do on our phones when we're buying something online, especially in Europe. But that kind of snowballed like most problems do. And now we think of it more holistically, and we think, okay, what are all the different reasons why a customer abandons the checkout, and how can we solve some of them? So at the moment, on average, 70% of customers abandon their checkout. So they put an item in their basket. They'll first find the website, they'll find a product they like, find a price point they like, put it in their basket, go to the checkout page, and then 70% walk away, which it'd be extreme. Our target is to make that more like 38, 39. So just try and stop some of those 70. And that's revenue percentage-wise is exponential. We're talking about going up 30% in terms of revenue. And we do certain things. We predict if someone's going to abandon part of the friction of the payment process, or are they being shown the right payment methods, and stop this universal one-size-fits-all. We try and treat and recognize, hey, this demographic over here, whether it be a 60-year-old male, might want a different checkout experience than this 20-year-old female. If you're buying a very expensive item, it might be very different to if you're checking out with a pair, just for a pair of socks, etc. Just more instead of one size fits all.
And so, is this more that's consumed by engineers?
Yeah, so we were up until October last year, 2023. So up until that point, we were an API product. So we could only really work with big e-com companies, or if we would work with more tech-savvy organizations like iGaming or EdTech, for example. People who actually own their own websites don't use Shopify. But now we're in WooCommerce, BigCommerce, Shopify, etc. So we're a lot more digestible by a bigger audience. So we can now start to work with companies that don't have a big engineering team.
And who's your typical,
You're going to say who's our ICP? That's a good question. That's something we're still working on. Being honest, right? We haven't quite fully landed on that. We are doing experiments at the moment to really narrow down. At the moment, we're going to the biggest pain points, the industries that we have the biggest abandonment. So we focus more on, let's say, one-off items, frivolous items that's being purchased, rather than your weekly food shop, which people will tend to complete. We look at certain geos. But what we're experimenting at the moment is, when is the right time to talk to a company? Is it when a company's about to launch overseas? Or is it a company that's reached a point that they're now hiring their first CMO or head of marketing, and now they're taking conversion seriously? There's also a trigger point where, at the low end of the scale, merchants aren't aware where they lose customers. So you can tell them how it's a great solution, but if they're not aware of the problem, then it's hard for you to say that you're the solution to the problem they weren't aware of. Yeah. There's a tipping point where they suddenly become aware, and that's when they're really good to talk to. We're a data science product at heart, right? So diversity of data is more exciting to us than necessarily having. It's better to have 10 customers who do 1,000 transactions a month than one customer that does 100,000. Even though it's a tenth of the actual overall cost, because we get diverse data there, so we can actually improve and learn. I do understand that point as to why you would say, okay, 10,000 transactions, obviously that should be better than 1,000 transactions. It does obviously depend on the cost of the item as well.
Yeah.
I was talking to a merchant earlier today that did very expensive watches, and every single transaction counts to him, and maybe won't count to someone who's just selling pens, for example. But it's definitely been over time. There's a few false positives that we've had when we've been digging out the ICP. Sometimes we've misread a segment being very happy and eager to talk to us as a qualification that we found our ICP. And that's not true. And you have to kind of be careful of the false positives and not spend too long going down that avenue. Which I think, looking back, it's always easy to look back and say, oh, that was a mistake. But you can only see that in hindsight. At the time, you're like, oh, okay, we definitely shouldn't talk there, definitely talk there. I also think there's different companies that will talk to you at different stages. So when there's only two of you, so when we first started out, there's only a couple of us, there's a small number of companies that will actually work with a small startup, especially in the payments. Whereas now we're a lot more established, a bit more credibility, we've got some good logos coming on our sheets. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, once you have a couple of big logos, definitely adds a lot of, at least internally on the sales calls, you can take names, and that makes a huge difference.
It definitely does, but it doesn't. I think the thing I want to be wary of is it doesn't necessarily mean that you can then keep selling to that scale of logos.
Yeah.
It's nice to have marquee, but you shouldn't confuse that again with something you think you can scale.
Because it's hard.
Because it's a hard, and you just get lucky sometimes with the right champion for you at the right time, who really believes and buys into you. There's one in particular we've got at the moment, and that just came for the guy was a good champion, internal champion, and his brother had recently launched a startup, so he knew that the problems and the challenges, so he was eager to help. And obviously, we still had to go through multi-stakeholders before we actually got to them. But yeah, it was because of him. Yeah, that really
So
got there.
long sales cycle, and unless you have a right champion in the place at the right time, it could very well take years to close a big logo.
Yeah, we work with PII data as well. So we
Hmm.
work with email, phone, or IP address, for example. So some organizations, you have a lot of InfoSec and data
Yeah.
security to go through, a lot of DPA stuff, that you can go through. Whereas if you talk to the smaller merchants, they just want to sign something nice and easy, and they don't want to be bogged down with paperwork.
Yeah.
Whereas the big ones have proper teams that are dedicated to make sure you dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Yeah. I'm sure the legal itself is a multi-month months.
Yeah, it does take time, and that's one of the funny things, isn't it? When you're a startup CEO and you're having to wear so many hats, and I can be doing all these different things, and also I'm looking at legal docs and trying to make an opinions on different things, or writing employee contracts in Spanish, which I've had to do. I'm not fluent in Spanish or employment docs, but that's a task, it's a job, it's on my list that I had to get done.
Yeah. You have to read it, but you have to have a lawyer. I hope you have a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah.
All this money, that's where it goes to the lawyers.
Yeah, I don't know whether to include this one or not, but I was shocked how much the lawyers take. And it's all startup founders who are out there about to take their seed stage. Just be aware that there is a big lawyer bill that comes when you close that round that people don't often talk about. Yeah, yeah, that's a big
So,
bill. It's the biggest bill I've had so far.
yeah, the big. You'll probably have AWS as the biggest bill.
AWS cost is the next one. Yeah, that's coming. AWS are very good to us. But yeah, the
That's how
AWS
Bezos
cost.
going to Mars. He's
Yeah,
using all that money.
yeah, it's done very well, really. And then you have this thing we mentioned earlier: is you pick a side, and then you've got this tech stack that's just impossible to move.
Yeah.
They entice you in with all these free credits, and then I think when I first started up, we obviously had tighter budgets, and I have so many AWS spend alerts, and now I just get tons of them constantly because we're breaching them left, right, and center. It's not crazy, but where I set the bar out a year ago, I need to readjust those and say, okay, this is just too much.
Yeah, that's true. Almost all accelerators have some sort of credits.
Yeah, because our lead VC is Coach, who was on the last round as well. They're a tier zero VC firm, so yeah, AWS have been very good to us. We do have a Google reached out, and they do reach out frequently, and I did just say I just can't justify why would it shift from one to the other at this moment in time, and maybe we'll look back. It's interesting. We were talking to the end of last year as customers, and these conversations are still ongoing. But yeah, they have different attitudes towards AWS, and they particularly like people to be using Azure.
Yeah. And these people are cheeky. They have all the outgoing data is charged, right? Ingress is free, but outgress is.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you
yeah,
want to use two cloud providers, that's
yeah. I'm not sure quite how we'll ever use the Google side of things, but we'll see. Who knows?
your time at MasterCard, Carta, or even HSBC. I'm sure any specific learnings from the corporate world that you've brought in.
Yeah. Look, that's all it is, right? I'm constantly looking back for things. I often. It's funny. We had a CEO at Carter, Rob. He used to say things, and I was like, I'll be like in the trenches and not see really the full picture of what he meant. One of the things in particular that pops into mind, he always felt there were certain things that should be just kept in the product org and certain things that should be in the sales. And you've got to be careful when information flows between the other. And I guess I was very naive at the time, and I caused problems, challenging things as you do. And now I look back and certain lessons that he used to push and say, okay, that makes sense now. I see why he said those things. But you only get to see that when you get to, yeah, it's interesting. I can look at a cart and I often think they were a different scale to where they're at now, where we're at. So they were 100 and something odd employees when I joined. They've been around for a long time, had a very well-known name. But they still, when we came to Europe, we probably still did too many geos and too many industries at the same time. And we should have stayed a bit more focused. And I definitely think that now, and we're so much smaller and we still find ourselves guilty of that. We break what we think is our potential kind of wireframe ICP quite frequently. We need to be a bit more rigid and tight. because again, we can't scale at all.
Yeah, if you're scattered and not focused here, that whole hindsight advantage only comes when you're iterating fast, right? If
Yeah.
you're not iterating fast, you don't have that hindsight superpower, and it is a superpower.
We just implemented sprints in our sales team and our outreach, 2 week sprints, in that bit to iterate faster, but also look at the results and learn quicker. But that old adage we say here is about the necessity and need to fail fast.
Yeah.
So we've got advantages and disadvantages, obviously being a small company, but time, I think, is that one. That you have to be crucial. You have to learn fast, and it's okay to fail. Just fail fast.
Yeah, just fail
That's what I tell
fast.
my team.
So for you, the funding also has been very inbound. How did that happen?
Yeah, but we've been super fortunate. I recognise that we've always had a lot of inbound coming in from the VCs. There's a lot of interest in what we're doing. There's a general feel. It's payments anyway, which is obviously a good industry to be in. The background of me and my team is strong. On a typical week, I'll have about 3 or 4 VCs would reach out to have a meeting. We've never created a deck. Yeah, I
No
know.
deck.
Very fortunate. Yeah, as I say, I do recognise that. I would like to say that I think we're onto something. We're doing something quite good. I've got some good logos. It's a good brand. We're having some good performance. So definitely onto something. But
Is it the Amsterdam weed or?
maybe that's helping. It's so funny. We launched the company here because we just happened to be here. I do think Amsterdam it's a great place to live. There's a lot of startups over here. We are low on tech talent. There isn't a lot from engineering and data science, and it's quite an expensive city to live in, which obviously doesn't help when you're watching the numbers. There are other cities, so we have a tech hub tech hub. We have a tech hub in Madrid, which is 9 people out in Madrid, data science and engineers, and then we have like more here from the sales and product and marketing. That's here.
And how did you end up?
6 of us here.
How did you pick Madrid? It's a beautiful place to pick.
So yeah, it was very with the data scientist and CEO. You won't be surprised by this. So our approach was interesting. Actually, I'll go back a little bit of the story. So we were closing our seed round, and coach was asking how much money we wanted, and we sort of came up with a bit of a number. And what are you gonna spend that on? And I thought, oh crap, okay, you need to think about this. So as we were actually hiring, and where we're going to hire them makes a big difference. So we identified 4 roles that we particularly wanted: back end, front end, data scientist, and ML engineer. We wrote out the same job advert, and then we advertised it in Krakow, Budapest, Berlin, Amsterdam, France, London, Manchester, Edinburgh, Barcelona, Paris, Malaga, Madrid, and Lisbon. So a lot. So we put those adverts, all 4 of them, out in the same period of time, and then we just evaluated the actual applicants. Who did we have apply? What the caliber? We picked the top 5 from each of them, and then we did like a head off which 5 was better than this 5, and then at the end, Madrid won from our side of things. We took into account everything. It's a big city. They have a number of applicants. They have a lot of AWS experience. The English level is good as well, which is fortunate for me. Yeah, very formulaic, very data driven. You're not surprised, right? Yeah, that's what happens, right? Yeah, that's good. Madrid's a really lovely city. I'm enjoying spending time there.
Wow.
I'm working on my Spanish. I fear it's better already than my Dutch. That's good.
Nice.
We got all together back in November here in Amsterdam, and we should be doing another group where we all get back together again as well. We also have a member in the Seattle office as well. So we've got 1 person over there as well, just focusing on US. Yeah, again, there's a couple of US customers, so we also work with them.
And do you have an entity like rooted in the US, or you servicing them from the?
There were servants of the Dutch legal entity, and then we have representation offices in Madrid. So and then we have certain HR companies that can help us out with different employment contracts around the world and be employer of record.
Yeah.
There was at one point we had 4 different HR systems going to do it, so we pulled them all together this year, and it's made life a lot easier because we also have a guy in Turkey as well.
And so, how big is the team? You said already 15.
Yeah, so we're sitting at 15. We obviously this time last year there was 2 of us, so that's quite a increase. And now we just catch a breath and kind of see how it goes and bed everyone in. Because you've got to be so careful that you don't just overhire and it goes so far. It's so easily done. We closed our round $3 million in October, so it'd be really easy to do if we weren't careful and just get a bit carried away. But we keep it tight, and then we'll let sales growth kind of like.
A few people recommend measuring revenue per FTE.
That's an interesting one. No, we don't. I like the idea of it or thinking about it. It's a funny one. So we're on the product that we're selling today isn't the product we expect to have in 2 years' time, which won't be the product we expect to have 5 years' time. So we're building a solution, a bigger solution.
Yep.
So at the moment we exist on a customer's checkout page, basically kind of sitting above their payment gateway. But we want to go both ways and own far more of the checkout and far more of the payment space.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to make sure you also like setting aside funds and money to build, as opposed to just focus on what you sell and then sell what you can do you can at this moment in time and go from there. Yeah, it's an interesting balancing point. I think a lot more about, so for us to close our Series A, we need to really out that we can take something to market and scale it. So we have a product, a known product that we know how to talk about and we know how to sell it. And so we say, okay, if we reach out to 100 customers, we know we'll make 3 sales, for example. Then, okay, that's something you can scale. You can say, hey, okay, I can charge that. I can increase advertising, I can increase the sales team, I can increase the number of conferences. We can grow that. That's my real focus over the next couple of years to get to that point.
Yeah.
And then we have a network effect as well, right? In any kind of data science. If, for example, we've seen Craig here and seen Craig there, then we start to know a lot more about Craig. Yeah. Whereas if it's all the time, we're always seeing Craig the first time, that's pretty tough. And we have to learn and think a lot more. The advantage we have, so in payments, historically, most people focusing on fraud. And so there's always a lag before you actually get the result. So fraud tends to come through about 60 to 80 days later because people don't tend to see it on their credit card statement. And then they go, oh, wait a minute, what's this? This wasn't me. And then they go through their credit card company and chargeback gets created. Whereas because we focus on conversion, we have an immediate reward function.
Interesting.
We can also make things more difficult. We can increase friction. A couple of interesting use cases that happens is that, for example, real-time payments is really blowing up, especially in iGaming. It's really blowing up there. But the problem you've got in these industries is that their customer base are all up at the early hours of the morning, whilst all their fraud teams are asleep, because everyone is a 9-to-5. So we don't offer them a real-time payment. So it never exists. So there's no insult, there's no negative. They just have to use all the other card processing which we put through it later time. There's another use case there's a bit of friendly fraud that's been going on, especially during COVID and since COVID, which is people saying items have never been delivered. That's increased.
Yep.
And there's certain lead indicators to see that's happening. And there's one brand that uses us to smell that out a little bit, or is that probabilistically high? Is that going to happen? So instead of rejecting them, which they were doing, we now remove chargeback payments, credit card payments, etc. So if that person was to try and do that, they don't have the mechanism anymore.
Yeah.
So just account-to-account payments. So that's where you can actually use fraud in changing a customer journey. When you actually think about each shopper getting a different kind of journey, you can go lots of different ways with it.
Yeah.
You can reduce costs, for example, or increase conversion. For example, I'll use my Amex card every single opportunity that I can get, but it's not a differentiator. It's not a decision-making thing. If I'm buying a pair of socks, I'll use my Amex card. But if the company doesn't offer Amex as a payment method, that won't stop me from buying the pair of socks. I'll just use a different card.
Yeah.
However, if I'm buying a flat screen TV, it might stop me. It's a different scale. There's certain things you can do to reduce costs.
Yeah.
You can reduce costs without impacting conversion if you're smart about
it. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting space.
I find it interesting.
Slowing the conversion as a use case. So that. How has the sales journey been? I remember us talking about how stakeholders and how that was a pain.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I feel like now we're a lot better at managing the multi-stakeholder sale. We've got a long way to go, so I'm not going to pretend that we've got it all right.
Yeah.
But we're definitely a lot better now. We're a lot clearer about all the different people involved. Because normally, traditionally, you would think, okay, they're talking around checkout and payments, so they must sit with a payment manager. The problem with payment managers in organizations is they see payments as cost centers, and all they want to do is reduce costs.
Yeah.
It's better to save a cent than gain an extra dollar in revenue, which is ridiculous, but that's the KPI that they have at their objective, so that's what they focus in on. So we talk more to marketing managers, we talk to revenue officers, operations managers, e-commerce managers. Those are the ones we talk to, the people that really have conversion as their key KPI. But we also need to talk to the product and the engineering teams to be deployed, and we also need to talk to the payment managers. So I feel that now we are a lot better at navigating orgs and being able to keep everyone, all the different stakeholders involved at the necessary steps. But that's only come through trial and error. That's only come through mistakes. When we've let certain things go wrong, or a lot of the time when you're early days, you have to think on your feet, or you have to create documentation for the first time. Oh yeah, the customers ask for it, say, "Oh, customer said, can you send the API documentation?" And you're like, "We don't have any." Suddenly you have to create it there and then. We need to create it in 2 hours, to get it back, and then go, "Oh yeah, here it is." Yeah, sure. There's a lot of sales presentations that are created moments before you go on a call. But now you have them. Once you've done those first couple of versions, you know what you're doing.
You know what to do.
I've been talking to a lot of smaller merchants recently, and I've had to totally change. They just want it a lot more straightforward. They want it a lot simpler. They want to cut to the chase a little bit. Yeah, and I was going through with NDAs and hey, it's all the DPAs because I'm so used to the big orgs, and that was such a mistake. They just don't send them don't send the majority of them a DPA to review for their legal team to look over, because they're like me, they're just the CEO. They just send it by DocuSign. They'll have a scan and they'll sign it, and that's that done.
Yeah,
you're kind of creating more friction than helping.
Yeah, enterprise selling versus SMEs, definitely. So you're shifting a little bit more towards SMEs now that you've got some big logos.
I think it's important to keep an open mind.
Yeah.
And also try and add value where value is needed. I think there is, as we discussed earlier, there's sometimes if you go too low down, there's a lack of awareness of the problem.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to educate someone on the problem, and then
of course,
tell them how you're the solution. They need to know it's a problem. Yeah, we have to be careful. But sometimes the lack of awareness around the problem is the problem in itself. Right, so we have dashboards, analytics that we do as a byproduct of our solution that we supply to the bigger merchants, just to say, hey, you can see what's going on underneath, see all the segmentation work and all this interesting stuff that happens. And it's just a standalone site, so it's just a byproduct of our main checkout companion. But actually, that's a product in itself to a smaller merchant, and customers using that still help with our learning anyway from our network. So these are all good conversations.
Interesting.
I try to keep very open-minded, not be just drawn by the big amount of money that you get from the big enterprise.
Yeah. So the sales cycle is definitely a big contributing factor in shifting your strategy this early on.
The problem with enterprise, it takes a long time to know you failed. Right? That failing quick motto is a tricky one, because they can be a year long sales cycle. Yeah, it's an interesting one. We're fortunate we have a lot of runway, but you just need to keep thinking. It's very hard to fit year-long sales cycles into 2-week sprints. We'll see. One of the things we focus on is like how we talk to our stakeholders, the people we're really trying to sell to. Who's our ICP and where do they go? Because we can't go to every conference. We can't go to these things. So which conferences should we be focusing in on? And we're payment people, so we're used to going to Money 2020, Pay 360. These MPE is in a couple of weeks' time, merchant payment ecosystem. But if we're talking to marketing individuals, they don't go to these. Where are they going? So you can't go to everything. So really knowing that champion that's what we're really at the moment.
And so are you using something specific to dig information on where they go and what they do?
We do certain things like looking through all the LinkedIn posts to see which conferences they've maybe tagged themselves at. Yeah. But that only helps with certain organizations that are heavy on LinkedIn. So e-commerce themselves don't use LinkedIn in the same way, especially the smaller merchants. So that becomes a little bit tricky. There's obviously things like Eventbrite data that's out there in the world, so you get to see certain things, which titles are going where. But really, we just have a checklist of questions we ask during all these customer meetings. Certain things we want to know, but make sure some of the team, as in then, is really shown fruit, which is basically for all asking the same questions. You can start really pooling that knowledge.
Yeah, of course.
Pulling that information, and you get more data points, then you can start to use and say, okay, this keeps coming up. Whereas if you're doing it in silo and people's asking different questions different ways, then I lose out on that shared learning.
Yeah, you have to zoom out and see the patterns, which means you have to capture that data while you're selling, for sure. Yeah,
we treat it like a data science project in itself.
Yeah.
So we use HubSpot for our CRM, but we log obviously all meetings that come through, all replies that come through. But then we treat it like a binary classification issue. Watch features predicted. If you were to predict, is this customer going to take a meeting or is going to lead to a sale? And what are the features that contribute towards that? Yeah, so again, Unsurprisingly, we treat it like a data issue.
Tools like platforms that give you that kind of insight. Have you heard of Spark Toro?
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
What,
it's a
what should I be looking at? Spark
eh,
Total.
yeah,
You're
it's
gonna have to put it in the show notes.
yeah. I'll put it in the show notes. So an interesting new startup called Spark Toro, which collects anonymized data by persona, and you can literally say, I don't know, a dentist living in London, where they're hanging out, what events they're going. It's a pretty interesting product. So good
That'd be
for
very helpful. You said
good
that to
for
me. So
research.
yeah, that'd make life a lot easier. Yeah, no, I do like that.
Yeah, because from a data science background, I wanted to understand like what are you using?
That's yeah, no, 100%. We do obviously like a lot of A/B testing and just looking at open rates, reply rates, etc. Especially at the moment with all the changes that Gmail have introduced around outreach. Yeah, no, we're really focusing on that. We did have an interesting one the other day. There was a mistake in the sequence, and we forgot to put a subject line in. And actually, we had a really spike in open rates. So yes, send an email to a prospect for the first time without a subject line, and they're more likely to open it, which is
Yeah.
crazy, right? So yeah, we did have that one, but
It's a
there you go.
sword, yeah. I mean, sometimes you can be marked as spam, no?
Yeah, you got to be careful. Yeah, you got to be careful, and also that's not the appropriate way. Right? Your segments, you're drilling down should be a lot tighter than that, and also then you can point reference to that. You should be focusing on what's the industry, what's the technology, what's the age of the company, what's the size of the company, what's the location of the company, and making references to that in your emails as well makes it feel less spam from the end user.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all get the spam messages, and it doesn't make any of us feel good.
It doesn't make my
No,
inboxes. I am horrible with email just because of that. Like, especially being a technical co-founder, you get bombarded with not only the tech suppliers and the tech solutions, but also people who are looking to sell other products that are, needed in a company. So
no,
it's a
there is
lot.
a lot, but the key is always to reply to the message anyway, even if you say it just, oh, it's not interested, because it breaks the sequence. It's all automated off anyway.
Yeah.
So if you don't reply, they'll just keep coming.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
Interesting thought.
it breaks the sequence.
It
So
breaks.
yeah, it's an interesting space. The last couple of months is always really tough for us for startup because there's no conferences around Christmas. The
Hmm.
conferences are kicking off again now, but a month at a startup feels like a year. So
Yeah.
much kind of happens. So you go through 2 months or so without conferences and that ability to be able to talk to customers face to face, and then you get to the other side. You're like, oh, now they start all coming.
Yeah. It's a good cadence. Else, yeah, it feels like, especially if you're a small team, not getting out in front of more pipeline, yeah, need to hit
100%.
at least once a quarter.
100%.
Yeah. How's the journey with Antler? And have you come across founder friends who've not been a part of something like this?
I found going through the residency I found going through the residency one of the most stressful things in my life. By the way, I'm not good at public speaking, so the act of having to present each week and change the decks was just like I found really hard work. So I was very glad when it was over. But I did look around when I got to the end of it, and I had a number of friends from that shared experience who remained friends and very close. And I think that really helps being able to come talk to people who are going through the same thing. For example, even today, I had some messages with one of them who had to do some layoffs, and that's really tough and it's really hard. And you can sympathise, you can understand how difficult that is.
Yeah.
You have to do, just having that again, that's someone who understands and you can talk to. Especially sometimes when you're a founder, everything has to be all amazing. It's sometimes very hard to talk about any of the negatives. You can't say it in your team, you can't say it to your investors. You don't want to come home and always talk about it to your other half. Yeah, it's quite nice to have a support group. I think when we first went through the founder residency and we came out of it, we thought by being portfolio companies with others, it'd be like, oh, it'd be so easy. They'll just all buy our product. It'd be so simple. And we were met with a bit of radio silence. And I think that to begin with, that kind of like surprised me. I was disappointed. But recently, those conversations have actually all started off again. And I think you just need to really show how you can actually help each other. You shouldn't just expect another company just to get involved and help you just because you happen to be portfolio companies. There has to
Yeah.
still be real value in there. So yeah, I've changed my mind on that from the Antler side of things, and now I do talk to a number of Antler companies, but like yourself, like this is how our first conversation
Yeah.
took place before being on here, and I think that's nice.
Yeah.
Feels like
Yeah.
an extended family.
Yeah, the support system is within the, like, even when I was about to start the podcast, just to get a few people interested, I first reached out to the Antler community and a few founders who I thought were doing good stuff. It was very easy to reach out to a few founders, see if there's interest, and then launch something out of the blue. Whereas if you don't have a community like this, it's very hard to, where do you begin? Like,
Yeah,
your
it's
personal
kind
net.
of, I do listen to a lot of startup podcasts, and I always hear things, and it's great, it's interesting. But I also feel that sometimes companies might get to the Series C, Series D, and forget what it was like when you were back at this stage, and struggle a little bit more to sympathize back down. Yeah, I particularly recognize and appreciate the Antler portfolio. We're with Coach as well, right? And so they have a lot of big companies, yeah, big names. Yeah, so the Antler community feels a little bit more home to me at this moment in time. I think I went to a coach event, and I think I was the trailer was opposite, Trevor was opposite us. There were so many big companies on the table, CEOs, and there was just me with my 6 employees at the time. And I was like, oh man,
Mhm.
the problems I have, the pain points I have, are not what you guys have. They're very, very different.
Yeah. Definitely, the problems do change.
Mm.
You go from 20 to 50, 50 to 100, and so on. In that sense, Antler community has been definitely great to have.
We'll all help each other as well. A lot of obviously reach out. And I always take the reach out. I always reply to them specifically because if my team reaches out to people cold and people ignore them, I can't complain about them being ignored.
Yeah.
If I then ignore people reaching out to me, so it's got to start somewhere. So I always take those calls, find time because I sympathise and see if we can help.
Pricing is another topic.
Yeah,
It's so hard to
yeah,
get the pricing right.
yeah, 100%. The business model we follow at the moment is really focused on the lift that we provide, and we take a percentage of that lift. That's the way in which we go, but that won't scale for mid-market enterprise. They need to have a flat price. They need to understand what's going on. So we do a lot of experimentation to discover that. I have it in my head that ROI should always be sitting in double digits, and
Yeah.
so you should be aiming for that. I feel helps. You still see customers walk away from a 40 to 1 ROI, and customers take a 5 to 1 ROI. So I don't think it's not hard and fast, but I feel it should be double digits. So we aim for that round about 15, 20 to be safe, just in case we've got our numbers wrong.
Hmm.
Is where we're working at the moment. But you're right. The pricing is really difficult, especially if you're slightly new in terms of a category creation,
Yeah.
which is where we're at. So there's no one to look towards to benchmark against. It's a tricky one.
So
I guess you should do some elasticity testing just to see what they could actually potentially take.
yeah,
But if you're an enterprise sell, you don't have the volume enough to be able to test that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I try to talk a bit more about when we have conversations and you get sent to procurement. I try to focus it a bit more on, look, we're trying to build something. So the revenue we take from you is to help us build a better solution and product for you, because that's the stage that we're at. It's not to pay for
a
me
full
for to have a
blown
Ferrari.
solution.
There's nothing coming back in. It's purely all going back into the engineering team, to the
Yeah.
product development team. So you will reap the benefit of that. So I feel like if I take that line, it makes it harder for them to come back and challenge me on that, and we could be a bit more collaborative and a bit more open on it. I feel,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's a fine line between, hey, here is a product, it can do blah blah blah, and then if you're a startup, you can suddenly, if you're too trying to sell too much, you might overpromise, and your approach is yeah, spot on. I mean, you don't want to tell people you have a Ferrari and
yeah. I really want to buy this really new watch. Do you mind if you just pay a little bit more?
hmm, it's actually good for them that you don't have a fully baked product.
Yeah, I would say yes, because it's exponential. So if we lift the revenue by just a couple of percent, it means a lot.
Yeah.
For example, payment method prediction, predicting which payment method a customer is likely to want to use and then changing it dynamically. Yeah, that could be multiple millions in terms of increased profit for them. Yeah, I think in some ways it helps. We do take the line of a sort of land expand with the enterprises. That's something that's come from a Carter, by the way, which is a sell to the need, sell to the interest they're in. Don't try and sell everything, and let's add credibility. Let's show what we can do, and then grow from there.
Yeah. Yeah, because once you have a trust factor, you can sell more. Sell, prove the value, however small. And now you have that credibility because you've delivered value.
then you can grow from there. And then you can try and take other new things and say, hey, look, we're seeing this in your data. I think we can help here. And then they'll actually more willing to get involved. It's hard from a sales perspective to do this stuff early because to begin with, you want to sell them everything.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, I got to have this conversation with, for example. So let's just sell the whole thing. And also, normally you should approach a sales conversation as listening to their pain point. But with some of these big orgs, they've heard that before. They just want you to save it and then kind of move along. So it's a tricky one. You do have to come with something. So knowing what you're going to be taking to them, that takes time to develop.
Yeah. Because as much as you would like to hear what their pain points are, they probably don't have the time to list out all their pains.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And you also have to have some hook to get them to talk to you in the first place. So if you're like, hey, I just want to hear your pain points, they're like, do you know how many messages I get a day of people wanting to talk to me about my pain points? And then you're going to tell me how you're the solution for them. No, that's not the way it works.
I've saved all of that for my wife.
Yeah, lucky. Yeah, lucky. Yeah, that's another key thing, isn't it, for startup founders, is to make sure that you don't just bring your pain points home. You also bring the successes.
There are too many failures before early in the journey that there's very little, but there are some ups that are fun, really fun, when you solve a problem and you see a result.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster ride, and that ups and downs can happen in the same day. I think we probably do over focus on the negatives, and we tend to ignore the positives, or the positives creep up and you don't really pay attention. So I'm running around about 6-8 customer meetings at least a week. This time last year, getting that many in a month would have been a great thing. So you just ignore these kind of things that now just happen.
Yeah. So this whole, forgetting about selling bits or things that are important or going to resonate versus selling everything. Some of this is also pressure from raising too soon, too much. And then obviously when you've raised a lot more money, you've promised certain amount of sales, which means you have to, get selling. Do you feel you've reached that kind of pressure, or it's just that you do want to sell more?
I feel really, I was talking about this last night, I was out with a couple of the team. I like the fact that even though we have a long runway and kind of have customers coming in, we still feel that need and urgency to move faster and be successful quicker and fail faster by return. But that's being internally driven. And
Right now,
that's all on us. And again, it's very easy just to sit and go, oh, okay, we've got lovely long runway, so we can just relax into this. I'm very fortunate with my investors. They are really supportive, and I know that they're really good at the advice they give is spot on, like stuff I need to hear. Of course, I'm making mistakes like everyone, but there's none that's been non-lasting or I've been caught before I do them. And that's come from them.
You're gonna make mistakes for sure.
I'm a super open kind of guy, so I'll quite happily talk about all the things that's going wrong. As a little bit, I'll talk about the things that are going well, and I'm very fortunate they also would just tell me what I need to hear at the right times.
Yeah.
They've seen more of it as well. This is my first time leading a company, the founder. They've met lots of companies and they've seen what's things that have gone well, things that have gone badly. So definitely soak up that knowledge.
Yeah, having a good set of advisors and investors definitely helps. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we didn't have any angels. I do sometimes wonder what having angels would have been like, whether that had been the real value or not.
Are you guys hiring right now?
No, we've pretty much got the team that we feel we need at this moment in time. There's more kind of customers that come on boarding that's creating need for other roles that we're not thinking about. And it's, I think as you take more people on, there's a pressure or, shall we say, responsibility that comes with that. That also really brings it home. I've had people moving country with their wife and children for this role to work at this company, to work at me. So that kind of, I wouldn't say pressure, it's just like responsibility. It's okay, now it's not just about me and my family, it's about everyone else's family, making sure that this goes well and they have a job and everything goes well.
Yeah, I think prudence while adding roles is so important. And then it adds to the complexity as well. The more people you have, the more communication lines, and things start getting.
Yeah, you get further away. At the moment where that's this stage that I can be involved in everything and there's certain things that come. I don't get necessarily firsthand. We've got some new dashboards that came out the other day, and it took 2 days for me to get to see them. if I'd heard on that they were coming. So I think they just wanted them in a good space. But yeah, as you get bigger, that's going to happen more and more.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but then you just have to make sure you have people that you've trained or trust that have clear direction in place.
Interesting.
Yeah, more problems, right? More people, more problems.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
cross those bridges. Just a new set of problems.
yeah. Every day is a new set of problems.
I do want to say I do enjoy it. I definitely enjoy this job. I'm not sure if my wife's going to watch this or not, but yeah, I do look happy. I'm happy on a Monday. Oh, great. Everyone's back. Because I try to be good over the weekend and not message people. I do a lot of schedule sending on Slack. So everyone, like 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday, like loads of messages get delivered from me. But yeah, I'm always like, yeah, Monday's here. Let's get going again.
As long as you're happy on Friday evenings, you can be on Monday.
Yeah. I do have a holiday coming up for the first time in a very long time, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going on the slopes, so it's very hard to take Zoom calls when you're snowboarding.
Nice.
So hopefully that'll be a nice little week break.
Snowboarding as a CEO. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe get
interesting.
life insurance.
We can talk for hours, but thank you so much for taking the time, and it was a lovely chat. And yeah, thank you for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. Look, I always enjoyed the conversation, so thank you.
If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. See you in the next episode.